I am Johnny Massacre, and welcome to the Johnny Massacre Show. This is the Saturday Night Massacre. On tonight's show, we talk about sketchy voting software known as Scytl, how Twitter has entered its final form, and everyone's favourite, the C word. So, right, here we go. Who's fucking with me? Scytl is the voting software that now has entered the news cycle. The leftist media, aka the mainstream media, has tried to suppress this because they don't want to lose the election. And there's a lot of claims of fraud going around online. Donald Trump's legal team just held a press conference. They said they're going to release the Kraken. I don't think they did release the Kraken, but they made some extraordinary allegations. They basically said that potentially millions of votes, at least hundreds of thousands, were switched from Trump to Biden. If this is true, this is the biggest scandal in American history. And there wasn't much of a Kraken, though. There wasn't much hard evidence. Now, I was watching the Ben Shapiro show yesterday, or I was waiting for it to start. And in the chat box, that chat is so cancerous. But the dyed-in-the-wool conservatives were saying things like, no, they're not going to show any evidence. They're only going to release the evidence in courts. They're not stupid enough to release it now. So you've got to wait, which I guess is a fair comment. We've got to wait for them to really release the Kraken in court. Anyways, Scytl has now entered the news cycle, so it's kind of everywhere. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about this because today I just saw something on Twitter which is a potential bombshell. It's fucking unbelievable. So let's get into it. As recently as last year, Democratic senators were talking about the potential for fraud and voter fraud with these Dominion voting machines using Scytl. But now supposedly fraud doesn't exist. So let's have a look at this link, which is a potential bombshell. We're going over to msn.com. Look at this. Powell, who is heading Trump's legal team to try to overturn this election, said servers were confiscated from electronic voting company in Germany and it was our forces that got them. Now, if you watched the previous Johnny Massacre show, you will know that these claims were already out there that apparently the American military went into Germany and took some voting machines. I played a video that detailed that information. In that video, they also said that Trump won in a landslide of 420 electoral votes and even won California. So because of that, I said, I don't believe it. It looks like a conspiracy theory. However, a piece of that news could well be true because Trump's main lawyer has come out and said that the rumor is true. The US military confiscated a machine in Germany. So perhaps the original video kind of took that fact and then ran with it and embellished it and said they had insider information about what was in that machine, and that is that Trump won in a landslide. So I still don't believe that. But the fact that this even happened is fucking incredible. If this is true, it shows you the Trump legal team is fucking on the ball. And maybe Trump had this planned all along. So perhaps the Kraken has yet to be unleashed. Let's read a little bit of this article. It says, Trump attorney Sidney Powell told radio host Glenn Beck Friday that she has heard that our forces confiscated the server of an electronic voting system company in Germany with alleged ties to the president's voter fraud accusations. The servers at Scytl in Germany were confiscated the other day, Powell told Beck during a 15-minute conversation related to voter fraud claims made by President Trump. I'm hearing it was our forces that got those servers. So I think the government is now working on an investigation of what really happened. So that's kind of incredible. It started out as a trickle and now you're seeing more and more news about voter fraud. I've got to be honest, I'm actually starting to genuinely believe that this was fraud. I'm looking at press conferences of Joe Biden stutter and not even be able to get through his teleprompter speeches. I'm considering the enormous rallies and insane enthusiasm for Trump. I'm considering that more people voted for Joe Biden than Barack Obama. I'm also considering that Well, that is a crazy fact. How can that be possible? How can Biden, I'm considering that Biden's only pitch literally was he's going to lock you down and he's going to raise your taxes. And that got the highest election turnout in history. It just seems so sketchy. And there's so much data floating around on Twitter. It just relentlessly hits your brain. Things like voter turnout being more than 100%. If you go onto Twitter and you go through some of the Republican feeds, there's just absolutely crazy shit on there. There's so much smoke around this election. The thing is, you have to be able to prove it. If you can't prove it, people have to swallow it and accept it. Because if you just say it was fraud with no hard evidence, that means the other side can do the same to you with the next election. And that's literally what they tried to do. How annoying was that for 4 years with no evidence? No, it was Russian bots that did it. The weakest claim I've ever seen, and they ran with it like it was gospel, and they tried to get rid of the president because of that. These claims look a lot stronger. Still, we need the evidence. So things are heating up quite nicely. And the crazy thing is, if Donald Trump does overturn the election results and prove it's fraudulent, the Dems have set this up nicely for a coup. They've allowed Black Lives Matter and Antifa to run riot and burn shit. And they said it's all Donald Trump's fault. Spoken like a true dictator who gaslights their victims and says their victims are doing exactly what they're doing. So this has all been kind of excused and put into the media for the last couple of years. Also, the media has said Donald Trump is Hitler, Donald Trump is totalitarian, Donald Trump is destroying democracy. They've all teed it up nicely. So if he overturns the vote because it was fraudulent, they're just going to say all of those things. Donald Trump is a dictator. We told you he's a threat to democracy. This is it in the flesh. And they're just going to allow and excuse the rioting still further. So I mean, this could be a fucking civil war, but Donald Trump will not go quietly into the night. We already know his character. The fact that he is president means he's not going to be going anywhere soon. So this could get really fucking interesting. Now, I've got a kind of big montage of things I just snapshotted from Twitter. It's a real pain in the ass to bring this to you. I snapshot this shit, end up with millions of photos on my phone, upload them to my computer, and have to kind of comb through them to work out what to give you. But I've done the heavy lifting for you. So some interesting news from today. Juanita Broderick says, everyone should be asking ... Why did Dominion back out of testifying this AM? So apparently Dominion, the voting machines which are under question, whoever's in charge of that, they backed out of testifying this morning. So that looks a little bit sketchy. Catard says, why is the Dominion leadership deleting their LinkedIn accounts, not showing up for hearings and hiding? So that could be a little bit sketchy. Now, I have some delicious snapshots of news for you. So, you know when some news comes out and it makes the left look bad, and then you get a sea of articles saying, fact check, did this really happen? No, it didn't. And then you read it and it actually did happen. Whenever you see any article like that, it basically means it happens. So that is Orwellian memory holing. What they're trying to do is they take something that happened and they try to stick it in the memory hole and rewrite what happened. And lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of websites came out with the fact check and said, no, the military didn't take any machines in Germany. So I'd like to run this back because the head of Trump's legal team is now saying it did. Have a look at this. Here we go. So statesman.com, fact check, did the US military see servers tied to Dominion election voting systems? So that's what those fact checks look like. And then in the same article, it says no. So then we've got one from PolitiFact. Let's have a look at PolitiFact's claim about these servers apparently not being taken from Germany. PolitiFact's ruling, pants on fire. Here's why. I hate that. It's so cringy. Here's why. This thing was claimed to have happened. It didn't. Here's why. This is how we've memory holed the information. They say voting equipment company Dominion Voting Systems has been at the center of unfounded conspiracy theories, many spread by President Donald Trump, that claim Democrats committed voter fraud and stole the 2020 election for Joe Biden. There's no evidence that Dominion systems were used nefariously in the election, but false claims about the company keep coming. So there you go. You can see how this is infested with weasel words. The claim is that the machines were stolen, and it said it didn't happen. But then when you go in, it doesn't actually refute the fact that the election machines were stolen. It says it refutes the fact that it was fraud. And of course, you can't prove there's fraud because it hasn't gone to court yet. So you can see how these are bullshit. These fact-checking articles claim to debunk it, but then when you go in, they debunk something else. There are plenty of these I could show you. So how about... I don't even know what liberal screed this is from, but look at this one. This is another fact check about these voting machines. It says, no, the army didn't seize a German server showing a Trump landslide by Kevin Roose. So he could be completely wrong there, and I'm finding this rather delicious, I have to be honest. So then we've got king5.com. They've done another fact check, which runs against what Trump's main lawyer is saying. K5 say, verify, claims about Scytl and election servers in Germany are false. All parties involved plus a federal agency said the claims of election tampering are false. So there's a slew of these. I could go on and on and on, but I find that rather delicious, don't you? All these fact checkers who came out a week ago saying, no, this is bullshit, this is false. Actually, they could be completely wrong, and that is delicious. So, now let's get on to Twitter. So I want to talk about how Twitter has entered its final form. Now, approaching the election, Twitter has been showing its true colors. It's not blue, but it is black. They are black-hearted. They are absolute liars. They try to masquerade as an impartial website where the content is created by the people. They literally state they are not a publisher in that they don't create opinion pieces and they don't edit things. If they did, under Section 30, I believe, they would be sued up the arse, because if you are a publisher and you basically edit stuff and create a narrative, you are responsible for what is on your platform. And because so much crazy shit is on Twitter's platform, if they were responsible for it, they would get sued up the arse and they would go bankrupt. So they claim they're not a publisher, yet they act like a publisher, and they publish and link to articles that are very biased and subjective. But Twitter's always tried to refute that for those reasons. Approaching the election, though, they started to ramp up censorship more and more and more. They're changing their terms and conditions to suit the leftist narrative. Now, maybe they actually genuinely believe that all this leftist nonsense is fact, in which case they are ignorant. But I don't think so. I think they kind of know what they're doing, and they've just become more and more brazen with it because they've got Trump derangement syndrome, and he is a threat to them because he wants to drain the swamp, as he said. And so coming up to the election, there's more and more and more censorship, changing the terms and conditions. They added a recommended section, which is just, it's like a parody of modern liberal culture. Liberal culture used to be awesome. In the 90s, it was fucking awesome. Do what you want, say what you want, go where you want, fucking man up. It was great. But it went mad because Trump sent them into a frenzy. And so liberal culture now is full of social justice, which is like a cancer. Everything social justice touches, it destroys. Sport, it's fucking all over sport. Athletes talking about politics. What is this? This isn't entertainment. No thanks. Music, everyone whining about fucking politics in music. Everyone tweeting about it. No thanks. Movie, loads of propaganda. Arnold Schwarzenegger in the latest Terminator being emasculated, being a fucking some knob in the middle of the forest who doesn't even fuck his wife. It's true. Look it up. It's all part of social justice. Video games, social justice enters video games. It becomes garbage. And it's infected Twitter. Twitter is like one of the main infection sources. It's like ground zero for social justice. They have a recommended section, and it's full of that weird liberal ideology. I'm going to show you some of it. Twitter is entering its full form, and they're not even trying to hide it. Around the time Donald Trump was getting elected, they actually started to censor his tweets. They weren't brazen enough to completely remove them, But you can see the slippery slope of censorship where it leads. Eventually, it will be completely removed. That's what liberals want. That's what Democrats want. They complain when Republicans or people on the right or conservatives have any sort of social media control whatsoever. They want them all banned forever. They want totalitarian rule. It's just true. It was obvious if you go and look at Twitter and just listen to what people are saying. And they're hiding Donald Trump's tweets. You have to click because it's controversial. So some unelected officials, some random soy-drinking retards from Silicon Valley are the arbiters of truth. And they think you're so stupid you can't see Donald Trump's tweets yourself. They just want to censor it to get rid of him. And that definitely contributed to the voting mess that we're in right now. And so Twitter is looking more ridiculous than it has ever looked before. And they're just revealing their true colors right now. So let's have a look at some of the fucking crazy shit that Twitter is doing. So, first of all, I went onto Twitter today and I was greeted with this insane liberal propaganda. Twitter claim they are not a publisher, but they're basically like the social media version of CNN. That's how biased they are looking today. So cast your eyes over to my screen. I went onto Twitter, the impartial Twitter, the non-publisher Twitter, who's open and fair, and I was greeted with this. Look at it. There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the US election, fact checkers say. So again, we've already talked about the fact checkers, right? As soon as you see that, fact checkers say it is Orwellian Big Brother narrative rewriting and memory holding. So that is on the front page of Twitter. It's so disingenuous. It's intellectually dishonest. It hasn't gone to court yet. And Rudy Giuliani in Trump's press conference talking about voter fraud said they're not going to release the evidence just yet. But that is what Twitter are saying. To delve a little deeper into that propaganda, Twitter wrote, and they're saying they're not a publisher. They wrote, Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and other members of his campaign's legal team, including attorney Sidney Powell, held a press conference on Thursday to give updates on their team's efforts to legally contest the results of the 2020 election. So that would be impartial news. If you stop there, then you would not be a publisher, but they can't help themselves because they're entering their final form, which is a kind of rainbow-dressed liberal clusterfuck. Twitter goes on, journalists and fact checkers, including some from Fox News, said that many, and that just sounds like a little kid talking. This is so far from professionalism right now. They said that many of the claims made about voter fraud and technology were false. Fox News was the only major news network to air the press conference because the other ones didn't want to fucking air it. They didn't want to give any airtime to it. What have you got to hide? So that's what I was greeted on Twitter. They didn't used to be this bad, but right now, Twitter is like the social media CNN, and they're not even going to hide it. They feel safe now that it looks like Biden is going to win the election. So then you can delve deeper. So what kind of news outlets did Twitter use for its sources? I wonder how impartial they were. They talked about Fox News, so surely they're going to lead it with a Fox News article because they're not a publisher, right? They're not biased, right? What you need to know. So this is the Orwellian Big Brother memory holding. So Winston, the protagonist of Big Brother, he sits there. There's two tubes on his desk. Out of one tube comes the news that they don't like, which is these voting machines might be fraudulent. Winston has to rewrite it and then put it in the he'll keep the rewritten news and he'll send that in the other tube and it'll go away to be published. And then the old news, he'll memory hold it. It's sent away to these subterranean furnaces. Now, the part where Winston rewrites the news, this is what Twitter are doing here in Orwellian fashion. What you need to know, this is basically what Winston wrote in Big Brother. What you need to know is Trump's lawyers held a 100-minute plus press conference with, and this up to this point, Twitter are not a publisher. Up to this point, it's factual. That's all they have to say. Trump's lawyers held a 100-minute plus press conference. But they add with unsubstantiated claims of systemic voter fraud, according to journalists. So messy, so messy. Why don't you just tell it like it is? Show the video and let people decide for themselves. Because like most of liberals today, not all of them, but most of them, especially most of the ones that I've met, they do not trust you to think for yourselves. And what kind of people are like that don't trust you to think for yourselves? Totalitarian regimes, like in George Orwell's 1984, like Russia, like China, like North Korea. No wonder that the left is so in bed with Marxism right now, because Marxism created communism for all those countries. The other bullet point of their memory holding is, there has been no evidence that Dominion voting systems affected any vote tallies in the election, according to fact-checking organisations like Politico, another liberal screed below. So they link to all these liberal screeds below who are hard left. No wonder Trump fans don't trust any news, because it's so intellectually dishonest. If you just respected people a little more, say what happened, have a video, let people make up their own minds, the world would be such a better place. But not only do they not do that, but then they gaslight people on the right for speaking out against it. Clown world we're living in. Well, thank God I'm here to call this out. So underneath that, Twitter linked to loads and loads of fact checkers who are all liberal fact checkers, Big Brother style fact checkers, which is pretty funny shit. So then I decided to look into the Nietzschean abyss that is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Twitter feed, and I was recommended a few topics to follow. Do you think it was a nice impartial list of people on the left, people on the right, and people in the center? No, it was the most hard left Twitter accounts you could possibly conceive in your worst nightmares. So these are part of the algorithm that Twitter uses to recommend you who to follow. Stephen Colbert, Trump, he has terminal TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Colin Kaepernick, the overpaid, talentless NFL player who sees victimization as a source of his income, is a central tenet of the grievance industry, and from his gilded mansion goes around telling people black people have no chance to make it in life and will be shot as soon as they leave their front door. Stephen King, he actually came out against some anti-woke stuff, but then he fucking bent the knee and he backtracked it. Trevor Noah, Trump derangement syndrome victim extraordinaire. Jimmy Kimmel, the guy who ruffled Donald Trump's hair and was absolutely pilloried for it and backtracked just like Stephen King, and he is hard left. Mark Hamill, see, I'm not like a lot of these leftists who will just cast you out for your beliefs. Mark Hamill is the protagonist of Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy. He fucking hates Donald Trump. I don't care. I love you, Mark. I fucking love you so much. But those are the people Twitter is recommending me. So here you go. Twitter's final form is some weird hard leftist shit. They've revealed themselves, and it's only just the beginning. Social justice, it's kind of like mold. You leave it, and if you come back, it will just keep on increasing and getting more and more filthy to the point where it's taken over the whole fucking world. That is something we can all look forward to, can't we? Oh, God. Okay, so then I went on to the trending shit on Twitter. Now we're going to get into trans rights. So trans rights is a thing, and it was trending on Twitter, and I went into down the trans rabbit hole. Holy crap, is that some scary shit. So let me just give you my stance on trans. I don't give a fuck if you're trans. More power to you. Do what you want. Get surgery. If you're a man, get tits. Cut your dick off. Make a fake vagina. Do all that stuff. Enjoy it. Have a good time. I actually support you doing that. Really, I do. And it doesn't bother me one bit at all. And I don't think you're that special either. I just think you're the same as everybody else. I'm actually quite liberal. I'm kind of a moral relativist. I think there's no meaning in anything. And I think liberal culture created quite a lot of cool stuff, actually. So more power to you. That is my stance on transgender before we start. Transgenderism is a mental illness. It's a disease because it requires hospital treatment. Name me one disease or affliction that doesn't require hospital treatment. It requires hospital treatment. It requires mental health counseling, and it requires surgery. Name me one form of surgery that isn't designed to fix something that is wrong with you. Even cosmetic surgery, it's about fixing your anxiety and your self-consciousness. So it's a disease, it's a mental illness, and the I don't know who's in charge of the terminology for this, but they changed it from mental illness or disorder to something else to kind of make them feel better. But within the same document or press release from this health organization that changed the vocabulary and terminology so they wouldn't hurt transgenders people's feelings, they still talks about all the treatment you can get. So there's no such thing as treatment for something that isn't a disorder. It is a disorder. The statistics are something like 40% of all transgenders, or at least transgender youth, have attempted to commit suicide. Now, you can try and spin that and big brother that shit all you want and say it's because of all the hatred out there. They all want to commit suicide. Look, we live in the most tolerant civilization ever. No one gives a fuck. I used to live in London, in Soho, gay district, loads of trans people. Nobody cares. Get over yourselves. People don't care about you as much as you think. Victimization becomes your whole identity. Sexuality becomes your whole identity. It's just part of the intersectional ideology of the left. So, really, it's not that big a thing. But it is a disorder, because if it wasn't, people wouldn't need that kind of counselling. Don't gloss that over and say it's because of hatred. That's doing the people a disservice, and they really need help, a lot of them. So with that said, let's have a look at the transgender stuff on Twitter. And it's really, really sad. It kind of comes across like transgender people have been brainwashed into this Marxist philosophy of the left that needs victims and oppressors, and they brand the trans people as oppressors. They're the left's favourite kind of victim. Trans people, they love you to be a victim so they can virtue signal about how they're going to save you. And trans people are so angry on Twitter. They're so angry because I think those angry trans people have swallowed that leftist ideology. It's so divisive. It's so divisive. And no wonder they're angry about it. So let's wade into this. So hashtag trans rights are human rights is trending. As soon as I saw that, I thought, who is saying that trans aren't humans? Again, this is some weird straw man that's kind of trotted out there just to further categorize trans people as victims and try to antagonize anyone who's logical, who disagrees with that statement, into the political conversation where they can be exploited as the oppressors. So I go in there and I see a few accounts. We've got someone called Quendorphins, trans/NB/polyam/autistic/mental. Well, okay, so there you go. I mean, sign of mental illness there already, and admitting it, which is good. And loads of these kind of quirky terms and stuff where people think they're really special and I'm this and I'm that. And it's very tribal, isn't it? I'm this label and they're that label. And what label? I don't care what label you are. Okay, so the first tweet is by Amelia Day, and it says, "There are too many of us missing. Nobody wants anybody to die. Today we remember them so that we can do better for those who are still with us. DMs are always open. Let's be kind to one another." Okay, fair enough. I can agree with that. And then there's an image with it, and it says, a little bit of it's cut off, but it says, have a look, being yourself shouldn't be something. So, okay, I mean, maybe being trans is difficult, and I'm not seeing anything about how other people are oppressing you or attacking you or whatever in that, so that I don't have a problem with. The next tweet I found was, okay, so now this is where things get messy. So Jammy at Bits of Jam has a very reasonable sounding tweet. They say, hashtag trans rights are human rights, and if you don't agree, please unfollow me. So the thing is, of course, if you don't believe trans people are human, then that's not a very nice thing. So I could see how people could agree with that, but it feels like creating a conflict where there doesn't need to be one. Because really, if you've gone out into the real world and you ask anyone about this, no one's going to say trans are not human. It's going to be very, very rare in any first world city around the world. So it seems like there almost needs to be a crisis here. That's a very liberal thing, isn't it? Coronavirus, a chance for socialism. Yay. Coronavirus, a chance for Biden to get into power. It's all Trump's fault. Yay. They love a bit of a crisis because they're all about socialism. And without crisis, there is no socialism. So it seems like a lot of these trans people who are siding with the left because the left are the party of victims, right? It seems like there's almost like an artificial conflict here. And I find that very distasteful. And that's like a lot of leftist things. You have to make an artificial conflict in order to substantiate your claims that the world is against you and something needs to be done about this right now. And a lot of it's just a lie. And so, wow, you're starting a huge battle and a fight just to complete your cognitive dissonance and prove your lies. That is the most toxic shit ever. And no wonder social justice destroys everything, because it's designed to create perpetual conflict. The patriarchy, white oppressors, all this kind of stuff, trans abuse. I'm not saying some of this doesn't happen, but to say in cities like New York and Tokyo and London that this is a problem facing people today is fucking nonsense. You get credit for being any one of these so-called victims. You get supported. You get bigged up. Everyone is on your side. It's such a false narrative. Okay, so now we've got Chie, which is a Japanese name, at commissions. They're even more reasonable than the last person. They say, trans rights are human rights. Fuck you if you say otherwise. I don't think the content of that message really matters. I just think the tone of it matters. Some people are just angry, right? How many times, guys, have you gone on a date with a girl or got close to some girl and she's a little bit nuts and it doesn't really matter the content of what she's saying? She's just angry. She just wants to have a rant. This is not putting trans people in a very good light. Fuck you. All right? Okay, I don't think you're going to get many people on your side with that. That's actually going to make people say, well, fuck you, trans aren't humans. But hey, this is Twitter in its final form. This is the kind of stuff we are being treated to. And it's just going to get more intense as the months go on. Trust me. And if the Democrats get into power, and it looks like it will, do you not think they are going to embellish and empower big tech even more? They're going to protect big tech from Republicans, and they're going to embellish this censorship and embellish this leftism. You see nothing yet. Next one, Toby at Ghost BCR says, in capitals, so this must be really important, female to males are males, male to females are females, non-binary people are people. So that's conflating the whole thing. That's conflating people who say basically trans people are not human. That's the same as people who say females cannot change their sex at will and that sex is not amorphous. So they want to conflate everything together so they can attack you if you criticize it in a logical way. He continues, trans people have rights too, 3 exclamation marks. Are you sure? I mean, nobody's supporting you, like plastering you all over Twitter today. Treat them like human beings. Stop misgendering them. Stop dead naming them. Stop misusing their pronouns. Okay, here we go. So again, we're conflating all this shit together. It's like saying, treat me nicely, like don't steal my M&M, and don't try to kill me. You can't conflate those two things together. Stealing an M&M is not like killing someone. This guy says, treat them like human beings. Okay, fair enough. And then says, stop misgendering them. Okay, so I'm sorry, you can't conflate the two things. Misgendering someone is not treating someone like a human being. So these are the kind of weird Orwellian kind of words they use to confuse you. Let me break it down. All they're saying is you have to call me by my chosen pronoun, and if you don't, you're saying I'm not human, and therefore you're a Nazi and you should be killed. And that represents a lot of reasonable, rational thinking, and mostly conservatives think like that. So what this is, it's part of a strategy. Part of this is a strategy to basically antagonize conservatives into the political conversation. And when they say something which is true, like you can't actually literally change your gender, you're a fucking Nazi, you need to be cancelled, ban all conservatives. That's how this ideology works. And that's why this is so distasteful. Serious trans rights issues are being hijacked and swept under the carpet, and the issue is being rebranded with a new narrative that is just designed to silence conservatives, in my opinion, or silence anyone who doesn't agree with this liberalism gone mad. What happened to liberalism? I swear it used to be so cool. I swear. So there's more of these. Whiskey on Twitch says, let me put this very clear. okay, this sounds like he's kind of angry. Well, I don't think he's going to get me on his side already, but let's read what he has to say. If you believe trans people do not deserve the same rights as everyone else, you're a piece of shit. Who is saying that? What is this false narrative? Again, it's Marxism. This is the same thing with Black Lives Matter. Take your pick. Pick some kind of victim, anyone who's not a white male, because we need an oppressor, and they can be the oppressors. And we take those people and we'll invent this conflict like you're all under attack. In America, compared to what? Compared to what? Compared to which country? Which country treats trans better than America or England? Assuming this guy's from America, he does look American. Assumed his nationality, sorry, hate speech. All of this insane confusion just comes from a dishonest place that doesn't make any sense. The good thing to do would be just to tell the truth, and all of this confusion and aggression would go away. Women cannot change into men. Men cannot change into women. There it is. It's over. All the pain has gone away. We've said the truth. If you don't like it, you have to accept it. And then we can look at the issue at hand and deal with it. But instead, we create this huge, elaborate tapestry of lies and confusion and emotion, and people get angry to try to justify it, because when you test someone's cognitive dissonance, that is when they will explode, when you're exposing the hidden truth they've been lying to themselves. Instead, we get all of that. Incredible. Am I wrong? Leah Proud Lakota says, today we grieve every transgender person who's been killed as a result of transphobia and simply living who they are. Trans folks experience higher rates of poverty and homelessness than cis folks, and this is compounded for disabled trans folks. Okay, so many ideological buzzwords. How many victims can you get into one thing? I don't want any trans person to die or trans people to be murdered, but higher rates of poverty and homelessness. Again, this is liberal thinking. It's everything is not the fault of the individual. I'm sorry, but if you're a trans person and you're homeless, I want to see the data. If there's a huge statistics of that, we need to look at that. But really, the only people who are going to solve it is themselves. No one's forcing them to be homeless. That's the cold, hard truth, is that whatever your problem is, whatever your race is, whatever your nationality is, wherever you are, however the system is stacked against you or in your favor, only you can do it. You are alone, and only you can fix your problems and stop these bad things from happening. It's tough, but in my opinion, that's the right way to look at things. So this goes on and on and on as well. There's a guy saying violence against trans people needs to stop. As you can see, they want to conflate loads of things together. So that might mean violence is just misgendering people, which is not true. Because if you say misgendering people is real violence, that means violence against the perpetrators is justified. You can see how messy and how open to abuse this moral relativism is. Do you know what? I'm not a moral relativist. I take that back. Not completely. It goes on and on and on and on. And then we got memes, and we got kind of, it's not really a meme, but you can just see how full of twisted ideology this movement has become. This says the ruling class benefits, ruling class, Marxism, proletariat, and the oppressors. This is all about Marxism. It's so fucking powerful. And look what it did to Russia and China. It's so evil. It's like a cancer. The ruling class benefits from division within the working class, and speaking out in favor of human rights of one group should never be to the exclusion of another. Who does that? Who, anywhere? Find me an example, mainstream, where someone is saying trans deserve less rights. You won't be able to find one. All you see is wall-to-wall support. This meme says we can't have working class unity without eliminating all forms of discrimination and oppression within our ranks. Fighting transphobia is part of building a working class solidarity. So that sounds like something out of the fucking Marxist playbook in the creation of communist China. So working class, it's all about the working class. This is pure Marxist populist drivel. And it's insulting to trans people. So there's more stuff, there's a lot of data, but I think I've pretty much given you a good image of what the fuck Twitter looks like in its final form. And last but not least, if and when Joe Biden gets into power, you think this shit is confusing and wrong? Well, it's just the beginning. Once the final form has fully been formed, that beast, that monster is just going to rampage across your city. Don't mean to bring the doom and gloom, but your future president is agreeing with all these people. Have a look at this. Biden says, at least 37 transgender and gender non-conforming people have been killed this year. 37! That's like nothing! That's like, what the hell? 37 people. 37 people dying is 37 people too many. I don't want to see anyone die. White, black, straight, trans, whatever. But 37 is a drop in the ocean. Statistically, even with low amounts of trans people around the world, that is not a lot. That does not suggest that there's this tide of violence against trans people. And then if I say that, the left is going to gaslight me and say, you don't care about trans people. No, it's the same with Black Lives Matter. Last year, less than 20 unarmed black people were killed by police. And we are led to believe that as soon as black people walk out of their doors by people like Colin Kaepernick, who we saw on Twitter earlier, they're going to be shot. Can you not see that having victims, that creating victims and creating this false conflict is central to leftist ideology? This is how I cannot believe that Biden got into power. One of many reasons. He says at least 37 transgender and gender non-conforming people have been killed this year, most of them black and brown transgender women. It's intolerable. This Transgender Day of Remembrance, we honour their lives and recommit to the work that remains to end this epidemic of violence, an epidemic of violence that killed 37 people. The real evil here is using those people who actually died and were killed, which is horrible, to exploit them to push your Marxist political narrative. I think that's evil. But hey, the guy's got Alzheimer's. Give him a break. So finally today, the C word. Yay, the C word. So I just wrote something on the Biden teleprompter, and I'm going to read it to you because I want to give you some of my thoughts. I get random thoughts through the day or when I'm running or pissing around, and I just want to relay them to you. If I try to integrate it into this show like it's just off the top of my head and I'm ad-libbing it, it just comes across as forced and fake. So I'm just going to read it to you. Give you a little bit of an intro as well. So guess what? Right? Joe Biden definitely not even the smallest chance that this election was fraudulent because he offered so much. He offered more lockdowns. That's literally what he offered. Who wouldn't want to be locked down in their house with top-down government control? I do not know. That is the kind of pitch that will create a record voter turnout, more than Barack Obama. That's what you voted for, apparently, the majority of Americans. So in light of that, you're getting what you voted for in record numbers. This is on Twitter. California governor announces month-long curfew. 1 month. Okay, so lockdowns, if they worked, why would you be locking down? Because you've done it already and it hasn't worked. So why do it again? I don't understand it. Well, I have a few ideas about this. The Great Reset. And, well, this was the central tenet of the leftists and Joe Biden's campaign against Donald Trump, was that coronavirus killed loads of people and it's all Donald Trump's fault. So they are more than willing to use coronavirus as a stick to delete and beat their political opponent with. So the fact that they would do that, they'll use coronavirus to their advantage, means that why wouldn't they use it to their advantage in other situations? For example, locking you down and forcing you into socialism. The left is the party of socialism. It's the party of affirmative action. So I find this very sketchy indeed. A month-long curfew with the California governor, Gavin Newsom, who's imposing that. He was seen out the other day in a fucking la-di-da restaurant that probably was about to go bankrupt because of the lockdowns that he's imposing, without masks, with all his friends speaking really loudly. So the rules don't apply to him. This is like any dictatorship, especially a socialist dictatorship. This is kind of what, to give an extreme example, comparison, but a good one to show you the perils of this kind of way of thinking. North Korea, they lock everyone down. They basically can't leave their country, right? A lot like your country now. And the people at the top, they take advantage of it and all the connections, and they make themselves extremely wealthy, and they don't abide by the same rules. They're all right, but you're all fucked. That's basically what the guy imposing these lockdown rules does. He goes out for a nice fancy dinner while you stay at home and you can't even see your family on Thanksgiving because that's dangerous. Unbelievable shit. So that's happening, and that kind of pissed me off, and that leads me into what I wrote recently about coronavirus, which is, and by the way, if you're just joining us, this is the Johnny Massacre Show. Thank you for joining. So my thoughts on the current C word. If this ties back into what we're talking about regarding the election, so there is some sort of continuity today. If the election is fraud, just saying if, why would the Dems want Corona to go away? Corona was their strategy to help them win the election. Corona also allowed mail-in ballots. Corona also allowed early voting. Corona also allowed late ballot counting. And these are things that any banana republic loves, wants, and literally does. Go and look it up. That is kind of terrifying, isn't it? Is it not? Corona is just an excuse to change the rules on a whim and pile on as many of your political agendas as possible. Biden has already said he's pro-lockdown, as we've just discussed, and he won the election with that, I wrote, and high taxes, and a dark winter, and an existential threat to reality in the form of climate change. All these pitches that caused a record voter turnout. Anyways, I digress. Leftists want to pack the courts. They want to remove the electoral college. They want to have totalitarian rule anyway, and they'll do anything for power, as proven by trying to illegally remove a fairly elected president for 4 years prior. So why wouldn't they want coronavirus to stay around? And why wouldn't they want lockdown? They have no morals whatsoever. Newsom, the Cali governor who we've just looked at, has glitzy dinners while you are locked down. Nancy Pelosi still gets designer haircuts while you are locked down. It doesn't affect the Dems anyway. And for them, the result justifies the means, just like Stalin, as proved by tarnishing 70 million plus honest Americans as racist scum and calling Antifa an idea, a violent mob that carries out the Dems' wishes unimpeded. The result justifies the means for the Dems, as it does for a lot of hardcore socialism and socialists. If the election is fraud, and the system is fixed, America is over. Dems were pushing super hard for mail-in. Trump didn't. That's a fact. Trump didn't for exactly this reason right now. And even if there isn't any fraud, the election process has already been undermined for at least tens of millions of Americans. And I wouldn't want to win if everybody said I cheated. I'd want to do it on merit, fairly. Imagine that. You achieve something incredible, but it's kind of undermined and loads of people don't believe it. Like winning a race and then refusing to be drug tested. It's like winning the election then refusing to have counts and pushing back Republicans trying to recount the votes and see what went on. Add to all this, Dems and leftists need crisis, and we've already talked about this, and that they pile everything onto Corona, then I think it's fair to say that a lot of leftists might want to have Corona. AOC's already done this. She recently tweeted out, I went into AOC's Twitter feed. Oh my God, it is pure eye AIDS. It's a ranting ideologue. All the ideological buzzwords, socialism, abortion, give money to people, big business is bad. It's all, it's all, you can kind of scan through it and work out what it's all about. She's insane. She says, to get the virus under control, we need to pay people to stay at home. She wants socialism. So why would she want to get the virus under control if having the virus there creates socialism and does what she says, which is pay people? But yeah, okay. I continue. Right wing. As for the right wing, and this is really interesting, what did they try to pile onto the coronavirus? What did they try to kind of leverage with the coronavirus? How did the right exploit the coronavirus for their own ideological purposes? And this really shows you how toxic the left is and how exploitative they are. The right had more potential to take advantage of this corona crisis for their own ideology, right? The right's all about nationalism and love your country and anti-illegal immigration and capping immigration. So the coronavirus is the ultimate excuse for the right to say, this is a time for, to put America first. People can't come in, foreigners aren't coming in, and this is your time to build up America. They didn't do that at all. Trump, of course, always bigs up America and says you should put Americans first. He's done that all throughout his campaign, but I haven't heard a peep from people on the right, about this, about nationalism. Now it's all about America. So that shows you how mentally ill the left have been acting over this and how unscrupulous they are. All I saw from the right was churches getting fucked during coronavirus and basically no Republican benefit. And this all adds up to a very sketchy potential situation indeed, and possibly a pro-coronavirus lean to the left, in my opinion. If that did win them the election, why would they want it to go away? And isn't it terrifying that if that is the case, and if it's fraud, you'd probably want there to be a coronavirus every time there's an election or every time you want to push something through, because the people will literally bend over and accept everything you're telling. That people will literally lose their jobs and still defend you about it because they're so ideologically possessed and so desperate to appear politically correct. Every time you need to push something through, just fucking release a coronavirus that's not even that dangerous, and then tell people that if there's a 0.05% chance of dying under the age of 70, that's enough for you to stay in your fucking house and accept all these things that you can pile onto it as well. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see how fucking insane things have gotten in the last couple of years? And if Trump were to win or had won, he's anti-lockdown. He's anti-swamp. So, in my opinion, why would they want to get rid of coronavirus when it means constant socialism, an excuse for environmentalism, no cars, look at the pollution going down, we should keep doing this, and it's a hotbed for intersectional politics. Even if the election isn't fraudulent, you cannot deny that mail-in voting helped Democrats. They admitted it. At worst, the left are pro-corona. At best, they are pro-lockdown and want top-down government control, and corona is a chance to do that, as proved by AOC, who always says the quiet part out loud. So, yeah, leftists piling on as many policies and rules on top of coronavirus as possible. Republicans piling on nothing. They actually want to take shit off. It's the perfect time for nationalism and no foreigners, but you don't hear any of that from the right, even though they're all supposed to be racist, white nationalists. And that be that. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say today. For some reason, I just got a vibe. I did a live stream last night, and that was awesome. My live streams really inspire me for this show. I try to approach this podcast now as if I'm doing a live stream and I'm just talking to my mates. So thank you so much for tuning into the live stream. Make sure you tune into the next one. I'll do one of them every week, I think, and it's a great pleasure for me, and I'm making some friends there, so that's really, really nice. Now, this is the part of the show where I get demonetized and play a song. So I'm going to play one of my favorite songs at the moment, and I might talk you through it because I'm a music producer and I know a thing or two about music production. Recently, all it takes is the right lyric to make a song perfect. You know, you hear a song and you kind of like it and that's wicked, and then the lyrics come in. If it's cheesy, it puts you off. But me loving production, I can sometimes let it slide if it's not super cheesy. It can give the cheesiness a context and make it seem cooler than it is. But if the song's good and the lyric comes in and it connects with you, takes it to another level. It truly is the icing on the cake. And I've been hearing quite a lot of songs recently with that. Songs about I'll be back before it's daylight. Like that lyric came in on another song by a producer called something Watson, and I thought, that's me, mate. I'm always out at night, fucking dressed in black, creeping around, vampire/werewolf, doing my thing. I relate to those lyrics. So recently I've heard quite a lot of good lyrics actually in bass house and tech house and techno, which is really promising because I didn't used to notice that some years ago. And this song, it's called Do This Forever. It's by Luxury spelt without the first U. And Do This Forever. This is all about my life. This is literally my life. You see how excited I get? You put the right lyric in a song, fucking connect with people so much quicker. That's what I'm all about. Do this forever. I always say to people, I will be doing this. I'll be doing the music until I'm dead, until I'm in the casket. I'll never fucking stop. And it's been that way since I was born. I always felt I'll never stop until I'm successful. So yeah, let's put it on. I'm going to grab my headphones. It's called Do This Forever by Luxury. One of my favorite songs of the moment. Here we go. that classical music sound, that's a sample. I don't know where he's got that from. Those are quite hard to integrate into your productions because the sample, you have to find out the key of the sample, which isn't that hard if you know a thing or two about music theory, but a lot of these producers don't. So it's really, really hard to work out the key of that sample and then play other melodies around it. But in this, there's not a lot of melodies, there's just a bass line. And since bass lines are monophonic, it's easy to match up to the key of the sample. Bass line on the offbeat. You hear it there? Listen to the offbeat. Boom, boom. Just an amazing song. That kind of bass line, it's an 808. That bass line is actually a kick drum that came from a piece of hardware by Roland that was released in the 80s. It was called, I think it's the TR-808. And people sampled that kick drum and played it as a bass line. And for some reason, for whatever reason, that became the ultimate bass line of all time. It came back into fashion when hip hop turned into mumble rap. But it just always sounds good. And when that's in a tune and it's kind of bouncing around on the offbeat, it's one of my favorite bass lines. Back to the orchestral sample now. So that bass line was used in a lot of jungle, which is the music that came before drum and bass. People will argue jungle and drum and bass are the same thing, but really, jungle really popularized the 808 bass line, and it's just been a staple ever since. So I love the bass line, I love the beat. I'm really into kind of 4/4 music at the moment, and with that vocal as well, that touches my soul, and I relate to. That's what great art does. It makes you relate to it, whether it's a movie, a music, or a game. This is perfect. Never stop believing, never stop telling the truth. Man, this makes me feel so good. This makes me feel optimistic about life, this song. Music is so powerful. It's magic. It's literally magic. Magic exists and it's called music. I love this part. Just a beautiful song. Do This Forever by Luxury. Definitely want to check that one out. Fucking love that. I listened to Luxury's other songs. I'm not a massive fan, to be honest, but that one absolutely smashed it, mate. Well fucking done. I've been Johnny Massacre, and I tell you what, mate, you better be back for the next episode. Otherwise, I'll be coming around your house. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, because that is what all those other cunts tell you to do. Layers.